Hi, welcome back again. In this session I'm going to be working on making a bass patch using various combinations of all the things we've gone through in previous sessions. We've pretty much done all the learning so far, so let's get straight into playing around. So let's start with an initialized patch and start with oscillator 1 and take it down 2 octaves to -2 with a sawtooth waveform and 8 voices. This will give us a nice rich waveform to start the patch off, so it sounds like this. Then, for oscillator 2, we'll set it up to +2 octaves, with a sine wave this time. This will simply give us a single frequency at a higher pitch, and I'll just use one voice as we don't want it to be the main part of the sound, but more of an additional resonant frequency or harmonic, so it sounds like this. Now, for some filtering, we'll add a low pass with a drive of around 25%, which will add some distortion whilst rolling off the top end, so it sounds like this. Now we'll turn on the EQ effect, which will boost a little bit of the bass and the treble, as this is what it does by default, so it now sounds like this. And now we'll add the compressor. This will help us to get the level under control, as the EQ boosts are making the level overload. I'll bring up the threshold a bit though, to around -7 dB, as it's a bit too squashed at the moment. Now the sound will be bassier and beefier, like this. Now, let's use a mod envelope to create a pitch slide. So I'll set the first target parameter to pitch A, and then turn it up a little in the positive direction. Then, if I set the decay to around 40%, we'll get a nice slide as the pitch modulates. So it sounds like this. Then we can set up the LFO1 to modulate the filter cutoff by choosing cutoff AB here. With the modulation amount dial set to maximum in the positive direction and the LFO on full gain, and with it synced to a rate of 1/8, giving you 1/8 notes modulation, and it should sound like this. The patch is really starting to take shape now, so let's head to part B and select solo so we can hear what we're doing. And on oscillator 1, we'll have a square wave and we'll give it 8 voices. And I won't transpose it at all, so we'll get some buzzy but hollow middle frequencies, like this. Now we'll add a low pass filter, and we'll give it a cutoff of 40%, and we'll set the resonance to 100%. Then you can hear that LFO1 is already modulating the filter, so we get some nice resonant filter sweeps that will be synchronized with those of part A, like this. Now let's set LFO2 to affect the filter B cutoff on its own, also at a rate of 1/8 notes, turning the dial a little in the positive direction and having the gain at full. What we're going to do now is to have the LFO rate controlled by mod envelope 2. So we'll choose LFO2 rate in the target box for the envelope, and then turn up the amount dial a little. Then we'll turn up the sustain slider. This makes the LFO rate really fast, which creates a crazier sound with more harmonic overtones, thanks to the ultra-rapid modulation on top of the slower LFO1 modulation. And now it should sound like this. If I increase the tack now though, then you get the LFO rate starting at 1/8 notes, and then increasing to the faster rate, so it makes the overtones slowly fade in, rather than sounding straight away as LFO2 speeds up, like this. If I add part A back in now, you can hear that part B is adding much more colour and character to the patch, like this. Lastly, on the modulation front, I'm going to create some performance modulation, so some extra effects can be created with the mod wheel while playing. So I'll choose mod wheel as the source in miscellaneous 1 section, and then LFO1 rate as the target parameter, only turning up the amount slightly. Then, if I turn up the mod wheel, I can change the main filter modulation to different faster rates like this. I want to set the pitch bend amount to 7 semitones too, so I can raise the bass up and down by 1/5 when the pitch bend wheel is cranked up in either direction, like this. And finally, I'm going to apply a couple of effects which will make the bass even fatter. Firstly, chorus will provide extra width and a bigger sound, but I'll bring down the amount a little with the dry-wet dial here. Then, the distortion effect will make the bass much crunchier, and I'll turn this one up using the amount dial here. Now the patch should sound like this. And that's our bass patch done. Let's add a beat to this and then have a little play with the wheels so you can hear what kinds of bass lines you can create. Before you start the next module, have a play with some of the settings in this patch so that you start to become more familiar with what each dial and control does. Sometimes you'll find a small adjustment here and there can actually have a pretty big impact on the overall sound. In the next module, I'm going to be going through the same sort of things, but with a view to creating a lead sound as opposed to bass. So I'll see you then.